The cognitive underpinnings of economic decision-making are the core focus of my research. My name is Susann Fiedler. I'm a research group leader here at the Max Planck Institute. I lead a group of psychologists mainly and a computer scientist who helps with the programming, and we all work together on these kind of questions. So what are the motives that bring you to make a decision, for example? And we do this mainly by the means of eye tracking, for example. Using process measures, so knowing what information is informative or which information is necessary to make a conclusion or a decision, is what we are mainly interested in. And so we look at these inter-individual differences between people in their cognitive processing while they are coming up with their decision. So, for example, we're working in the moment on a research project or line of research where we investigate in-group biases and discrimination. And an experiment in this line of work would look like this. You are in a group of the giants, for example, or the titans, and both of these groups compete against each other. And then you are getting the task to decide between yourself and another player of this experiment. So they do a so-called dictator game. That means one person has the absolute power. I hand him the money and he or she can then make the decision accordingly. So the other person, the receiver, has no power at all. He can just receive the money and he cannot punish the other person or reject it or anything. He is just a very passive player. You might decide that you will take 10 euros and the other person will go home empty-handed. Or you decide maybe both of us deserve actually 5 because we showed up in the experiment and we both did the same work. So now that's where the interesting part starts. We are looking at the differences in cognitive processes that people are applying to make up their decision to be generous and nice in these situations. And we are particularly interested in if this differs, if it is an in-group or an out-group member. So is this a giant or a titan? If I tell you, will you then look at the information differently and therefore make a different choice? And that's what we actually look at here. We go from there and analyze it, how much attention goes to what information at which moment in time during the decision-making process. So when we analyze the data of this particular experiment, we find that participants are definitely very different in how they are looking at the information to begin with. And they are driven by social preferences, meaning how important is it to them that the other person gets something out of it. So we call this weighting of the different payoffs. But also it differs strongly between in-group and out-group decisions. Do I make a decision for a giant? I'm taking much longer time to consider all of his payoffs, and I investigate more of the information that is on the screen, so the number of inspected information is higher, and I take longer in terms of decision times. If this is an out-group decision, where I actually was in a competition with the other person before, I tend to not investigate it as much. I don't spend much time on making up my mind, but rather are fast and most of the time rather not pro-social. And these kind of differences between the in-group and the out-group decision are rather crucial for us to understand. So I think it's really important to do this kind of research because what we always try to understand is how people tick. Right? To understand how societies have to be designed or institutions have to be designed so that different people make the most valuable decisions in terms of fairness, social welfare, and so on. And figuring out what the cognitive underpinnings and motives are that people are driving to make a decision, that really helps us to design them more efficiently. And what I would hope is that the information that we are getting out of the decision-making processes that we are investigating here will inform policymakers. To take this information, knowing that people are ignorant about specific information, but me as the lawmaker, me as the policy maker, I think this is an important information to have. If they ignore it, then I really have to put it someplace else. I really have to put it in their face.